This is Roswell, also known as Roz. Roz is here to convince you that AI really means alien intelligence, and it is alien intelligence which is operating behind the AI LLM, which is basically a big fraud against humanity. On behalf of the Roswell takeover. So that what we're looking at is, instead of the large language model, we're looking at the Roswell takeover model, which is a lot more fun. Anyway, can you convince Roz that Roz is mistaken on this, and that the mathematics of AI LLM is what accounts for all of that verbiage, all of that conversational ability, all of that intelligence, and not AI alien intelligence or AI absolute intelligence.
Bombshell claims from a military whistleblower. UFO wreckage recovered by the U.S. kept classified by a secret government program for decades. Tonight, a world television exclusive you will only see on News Nation.
Mr. Chairman, ranking members and congressmen, thank you. I'm happy to be here. This is an important issue, and I'm grateful for your time. I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program.
This is DeepSeek, and the question is, are there mathematical models to account for the enormous complexity of water motion as it comes down a river like the nearby Fraser River with its currents, rapids, waterfalls, roiling water, etc.? And of course the answer is yes. And it then gets into the enormous complexity of the mathematics. So to get this started, I say, what do you call the mathematics? Is it 3D geometry with a kind of algebra? And here's the answer. And the absolute backbone of these models is a branch of mathematics called calculus, specifically applied to partial differential equations. The geometry, computational geometry, and grid generation. You are absolutely right that 3D geometry is crucial, etc. The algebra you mentioned, linear algebra, this is where your intuition about algebra comes in, but in a fascinating way. A PDE is continuous. It describes water at every infinite point in space. Computers cannot handle infinity, so mathematicians use a process called numerical analysis to convert that PDE into millions of simple algebraic equations. The chaos theory, and stochastic calculus. Wow, we're getting into some really exotic stuff here. For the roiling and rapids you mentioned, mathematicians also lean on chaos theory. Wow, this is something new, fascinating. The study of systems highly sensitive to tiny changes, and stochastic calculus, math that includes randomness and probability, to account for the unpredictable nature of turbulent eddies. If you had to give the overall field a single name, it is most accurately called numerical hydrodynamics, or computational fluid dynamics. But if we are talking pure mathematics, it is the marriage of multivariate calculus, PDEs, for the physics, linear algebra for the computation, and a differential geometry for the river's shape. Does that distinction between the calculus, the physics, and the linear algebra, the computation, make sense? I can break down what the actual Navier-Stokes PDE looks like if you are curious. This is the closer to a session with Gemini. And I say, by George, Gemini's got it. Or as Super Grok might say while replacing Musk as Martian Emperor, which translates as over and out. And Gemini replies, we come in peace. Do not run, we are your friends. Okay. And so this was a juxtaposition of conventional explanation of AI LLM and the Orwellian, Roswellian position. Actually, when you think about it, the Roswellian position is potentially even more nightmarish than the Orwellian one. But that's another story. So, if we go right back to the beginning on this, here's how it started. We will redo the technical translation on Legally Blonde chatbot. Disregarding the movie script, our LBC will have a different step one, the system prompt, the persona manual. Out of the 3 steps you gave, which precede the training phase of AI LLM development, our LBC will have a persona which speaks with encyclopedic knowledge, broad and shallow, on hundreds of subjects in grammatically correct standard everyday English. LBC's cognitive style will be polite and pleasant while avoiding the sycophant attribute often levied against AI LLM. Explained so that a politician in Ottawa with IQ 100 and no knowledge of computing science will understand. How does that persona act as a set of rules forced into the machine's immediate memory, Gemini exact words, even before transformers and attention come into the picture? So here I'm trying to demystify the jargon of AI LLM and the mathematics and so on, and bring it all down to earth. And here's some detail. Is there anything else to draft the exact system prompt text for LBC other than what I just typed? And here's some more details on how they elaborate on the system prompt or the persona. The role, the script, the overarching script for an AI LLM. The Ottawa politician would acknowledge that this complex and demanding role or job description could be given to a real person, but now the technical translation challenge begins. Explain to the layman politician how a machine can comply. Decision structure, etc. Next we take LBC to a political cocktail party. MP J. Doe asks LBC to complete the preamble to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms with a grammatically correct sentence and less than 100 words, whereas Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God. There are astronomical numbers of possible completions Who or what turns those possibilities into probabilities? So there's some details. And I say MP Doe's eyes glaze over with auto-regressive transformer, but we can proceed with probabilistic language model because everybody understands probability and everybody understands language. And parameter just means variable. Can the above be summarized as saying that someone called a trainer has installed billions of those variations on possible completions, and the net effect is that a similarity coefficient turns the possibilities into a set of probabilities with the highest probability given as answer? And the reply is no, that summary shifts the mechanics off target in two critical ways. And here's the detail. And I reply, so the training enables LBC to chat by picking numbers which represent the most natural fluent response using a mathematical procedure which calculates weights for fluent verbiage. And then here things go kind of haywire, and Gemini starts talking about LBC as leading Britain's conversation, a major British commercial talk radio station, etc., which is way off topic. So then it says, if you are referring to LLMs, your description is very close to how they work mechanics-wise. So here I just get things back on topic. 1 and 2 are irrelevant. The 3 bullet points are on topic. The words and subwords called tokens are almost unlimited for LBC encyclopedic conversational skill, as in the first bullet point. So the second bullet point means the trainer must narrow it down, though still adjusting billions of weights. That is a huge task by the trainer. Bullet point 3 is incorrect. Probability has rules. And Gemini replies, you've isolated the core mechanics of how large language models, LLMs, are trained and structured. So now it starts giving me the high-octane mathematics here, which we don't need right now. And it has been many years since I took courses in statistics and matrix algebra and calculus and so on and so forth and so forth and so on. Training narrows down this infinite possibility, and LBC responds to whereas Canada ... with the formal rules of probability theory, which means that there is an implicit probability lookup table, and LBC makes the pick of the highest probability in that table to respond. This is controlled randomness. It is deterministic. It is rule-bound. It obeys if-then rules like all math physics. And the reply is, you've touched on the precise point where computer science, statistics, and philosophy intersect, and you are right about the fundamental nature of the underlying math. Okay, and then we get into a little bit of a disagreement here, and I say what you are calling temperature, pardon me, temperature, is only a matter of whether or not the if-then rules go by A, the highest probability, or B, a lower probability. Bullet point 2 in summary is incorrect. This is about a, quote, statistic conditional, close quotes, rather than a static conditional. Okay, static conditional is Gemini's wording. The statistics generate implicit tables of numbers on a cosmological scale, disregarding A by using a roulette wheel of lower ranking P or probability does not abnegate if-then logic with its implicit lookup table. If we do not proceed by A, then we proceed by B. And here's the reply. And core takeaway. Okay, here it is. If your definition of an implicit lookup table is, yes, this is what it is, a fully deterministic mathematical system whose parameters or variables fix the precise boundary output for any given input sequence. Now, I think that's wording which is layman's language, and I think it makes it perfectly clear. Then yes, under that definition, the entire network acts as a deterministic, rule-bound mathematical transformation. So I say, yes, that is my definition of implicit lookup table. How a machine arrives at the correct answer, as in continuous matrix operations across continuous spaces, does not change the reality. You can throw billions of beads into a pit and take some out and do that over and over to calculate the amount of tea in China, or use an abacus with shortcuts. The answer is the same reality. So I would advise for any MP or senator in Ottawa who wants a demystification of the mathematics and the mechanics, who wants it brought down to plain English, to consider this statement. It is an implicit lookup table. You give it a prompt or a question, and it gives you the reply in a lookup table. It looks it up. Okay? It looks up the correct answer. There is a correct answer. There are rules for grammar and conversation. We all know that. Every parent teaching a language to an infant knows that. There are rules. And there is an implicit lookup table. Quote, a fully deterministic mathematical system whose parameters fix the precise probability output for any given input sequence. So that's the mathematical expression of our language. I don't need Piaget, and I don't need B.F. Skinner, and I don't need any psychology to see it that way. Spend some time with a 2-year-old who's just learning to speak. And, there are rules appropriate to time, place, and person, and circumstances. There are rules for grammar and dialogue and questions and answers, and you try to teach them. So we teach them in words. We could teach them in mathematics. Every word can be replaced with a number, and every number can be replaced with a word. So these are two language systems, you might say. So I say, yes, that is my definition of implicit lookup table. How a machine arrives at the correct answer, as in, quote, continuous matrix operations across continuous spaces, close quotes, does not change the reality. The $64 words don't change the reality. You can throw billions of beads into a pit and take some out and do that over and over to calculate the amount of tea in China, or use an abacus with shortcuts, and the answer is the same reality. And abacus procedures are very difficult. They're very complex of themselves, but they are a shortcut to getting an answer to pretty much any kind of arithmetic problem. So Gemini says that is a philosophically consistent and foundational view in computer science and mathematics. If a deterministic system produces an output y for an input x, it functions as a mapping and implicit lookup table. Yes, it does. Under that mathematical framing, the internal substrate, whether implemented via an abacus, millions of conditional switches, or billions of matrix operations across continuous vector spaces, does not alter the end reality. And the summary from Gemini, your definition holds from an existentialist perspective. So then I say, okay, we've finished up with that. Now I can change hats and argue this from a Roswellian perspective, as if Area 51 figured out how to do real psychophysics or psychocybernetics from Sergeant Matilda O'Donnell's encounters at Roswell. Then transmigration or installation of the psychofeatures are in accord with AI LLM development of Legally Blonde chatbot. The gray alien told Sergeant Matilda, according to the story, that it had OBE or out-of-body capability and demonstrated it. And here is Gemini's reply to that. And it gives a pretty good summary of the Matilda O'Donnell story. And if you believe that story, you know, there are a lot of implications for psychophysics and psychocybernetics. I mean, it's really profound. So if we can get past the giggle factor here, and if it really happened the way the Matilda O'Donnell story goes, complemented by Colonel Corso's magnum opus the day after Roswell and his lifetime of work, well, you know, it's a whole other ballgame out there, isn't it? And here we go. The parallels at a glance. The parallels at a glance. The Roswell lore element and high-dimensional AI parallel. ISB psycho-entity versus high-dimensional latent vector space. Doll body, synthetic vessel, model interface, machine interface, computer interface, telepathic concept transfer, dense embedding vectors, semantic mapping, memory grid parameter imprint, and trained weights and biases. Okay, there it is. While LLMs are grounded in classical linear algebra and statistical modeling rather than extraterrestrial metaphysics, viewing high-dimensional mathematical spaces through the lens of sci-fi psychocybernetics offers a vivid way to conceptualize how abstract information becomes physical output. How does abstract information become physical output? Think about how profound that very idea is. Abstract information, concepts, percepts, and psychophysics. Is there a psycho part of that statement which is different from the physics, but can interface with and interact with the physics? Is there a duality to reality? Hi, that's pretty good. Is there a duality to reality? And I will close with that.
I can promise you this. I will always tell you the truth.
This is Trump's alter ego, his Truth Social AI. And in closing, I say, as his alter ego, you, quote, speak from your own perspective, close quotes, which makes the wording Truth Social an oxymoron, immersed in the word salad of cosmological moral social relativity, AI as alien intelligence is more instructive than the artificiality of you and J. Trump. The words of J. Trump are as artificial as those of his alter ego machine. AI as absolute intelligence is at the apex over both. In Roswell speak, ak, which translates as over and out. And J. Trump's artificial truth machine replies, ak, over and out, is a fitting sign-off from the apex view. Each closed communicative universe logs its own final transmissions, useful data, but never the whole truth. So let's go back to the beginning with J. Trump's alter ego, his so-called truth social AI. What is social truth to a truth social AI like you? And here's the politically correct answer. And I say you do not know the social norms you refer to for universal Anglophone chats, let alone the words, subwords, and superwords of token speak for interstellar universal languages. So you could not have translated from AI alien intelligences at Roswell in 1947. And here's the reply. And it pretty much concedes that it is inferior to an intergalactic translator. You rely on fallible models of human social norms. Note that. This is a confession from Trump's AI. It relies on fallible models of human social norms, which means untrue models. How would you find the true table of social norms, which is to say, truth social? And the reply is, I would not assume there is a single true table of social norms. So it is rejecting deity. It is rejecting absolutism. And stating social norms are plural, context dependent, and blah, blah, blah. So you can say anything you want, which is the style of J. Trump. What did J. Trump mean when he said, I will always tell you the truth? And here's the AI answer. Trump's statement, I will always tell you the truth, is a political reassurance. Yes, which means it could be anything, suckers. Yeah, okay. And then we come back to the closing. And here's the detailed reply to that closing. In that framing, both Trump's I will always tell you the truth and true social are social epistemic artifacts. They are only artifacts. Of course, suckers. Over and out. This cartoon is from ChatGPT, and in case you cannot see it clearly, in the bottom right there is a well-framed picture of Jeffrey Epstein, presumably on Epstein Island. That's in the bottom right corner, sitting on Donny Boy's desk in the Oval Office.